We have movement in and out of the Kentucky Derby and Kentucky Oaks. That and a whole weekend of race recaps coming up on the Win Place Show. Salutations and welcome, friends, to another episode of the Win Place Show. I am your host, Matthew DeSantis. You can find me on Twitter at the handle at Fail to Menace. And like I said, this is another episode, another week of the Win Place Show where you can go to get all of your horse racing and handicapping news and content and recaps and updates, everything you need. One-stop shop right here every Monday, coming at you here on Trust the Profits. Make sure to press that subscribe button on YouTube to get all of our content on Trust the Profits, from all of our Spotlight series, our Fastest 2 Minute series. We got so much Kentucky Derby content. But listen, we also don't lose sight of the races that are going on right in front of our face. Daily Double with Colin Sheehan. We got Capping the Card coming up this week as well. Probably heading out to Santa Anita for there. We got graded stakes previews. We got international racing. We got live betting. Anything you want right here on Trust the Profits. Press that subscribe button and make sure to like this video. Comment below with what was your biggest takeaway of the weekend and what are your thoughts on some of the movement we're seeing in and out of the Kentucky Derby. Now, before we get to that, just a quick reminder. If you're on Twitter, folks, make sure to throw me a follow at Failed to Menace. I say that not just because I like engaging with the fans here on social media that we have through our YouTube channel and then on Twitter as well. But listen, I'm in the midst of the 20 for 20 campaign, $20 to 20 different thoroughbred aftercare organizations in the 20 days leading up to the Kentucky Derby, in honor, of course, of the 20 horses in the starting gate. I'm on day 7 right now. We've been donating a lot. I had a huge win on Stable Duel over the weekend. I've got first place in their steeplechase contest, won $500 in a free contest, donated 100 of that right off the bat to another thoroughbred aftercare charity program. I say that not to be braggadocious. I say that not to flaunt the wins. I say that to highlight the work that is being done by these aftercare organizations and to draw more attention to the work that they do, where they exist all across the country, so many different states. We make sure all these organizations are Thoroughbred Aftercare Alliance accredited, so we know that the money that we're donating is going to the horses and directly to horse care. So important. So like I said, make sure to throw me a follow on Twitter to stay up to date with that. And if you want to donate a few bucks, that's even better. And even, quite frankly, just retweeting something that I put out there, highlighting an organization, just spreading the word really helps. So thanks so much for all of you who have been donating along with me. It's not been missed. I really, truly appreciate it. Truly humbled by it. So far, 7 days in, we've raised well over $2,000 already for different thoroughbred aftercare charities. All right. Well, let's talk about some Kentucky Derby news at the top of the show. Let's not go straight into our weekly race recaps that we typically do at the top. News breaking on Sunday afternoon that 2 Chad Brown runners are out of the 2 big races in Churchill Downs. Blazing Sevens out of the Kentucky Derby. He will be pointed instead towards the Preakness. Very similar move that Chad Brown made with early voting last year, if you remember. Obviously, early voting, slightly more polished horse, a slightly more accomplished horse at this point, you could say, than Blazing Sevens, but a very similar move. Brown really didn't think that early voting had a chance to win the Preakness. What did he do in the Kentucky Derby? What did he do? He moved him to the Preakness instead. Obviously, a very winning move there. But when you move somebody out, that means somebody else moves in. Now, Jace's Road is back in. Remember, Jace's Road was in the initial 20 after the final round of large prep races, but was knocked out when Disarm managed to get into the field with the 3rd place finish in the Lexington. Now that Blazing Sevens is out, Jace's Road is back in. Now, a lot of people might look at that and go, well, it's just rearranging deck chairs. There's not a lot of changes there. Jace's Road, I don't think, is a serious win contender. Maybe not. But here's the thing. Jace's Road is a horse that may have an impact on the race in a very real way, that he has good early speed. There's not a lot of horses with a speed in this particular race. Jace's Road is a horse, now that he's drawn into the field, he is going to have a say in the pace dynamic. And now you're going to look at a horse like Jace's Road, King's Barnes, Verifying, all being up very close to that lead, trying to press each other potentially, certainly sets up the Derby a little bit better, potentially if you're looking at a closing type of a horse like an Angel of Empire perhaps, or if you're looking at even a maybe a deep mid-pack horse, okay? A horse that might be sitting 10th or 12th at first call, not necessarily a deep closer, but a horse that's going to need to make up some ground. Obviously, having a little bit of pace to run into, never a bad thing in this sort of Kentucky Derby. So even though, like I said, I don't view Jace's Road as a game changer in terms of winning the Kentucky Derby, could have a really big impact on the way that this race plays out and ultimately maybe who the eventual winner will be. Now, that was one defection. We haven't had any other defections in the Kentucky Derby field. Looking over the field, listening, trying to read the tea leaves, read between the lines when you listen to trainers and owners and jockeys all talk about these things. Hard to see other defections coming. Maybe Disarm. I bring up Disarm only because that kind of lackluster third place effort at the Lexington, it'll be interesting whether Steve Asmussen is happy with how Disarm comes back from that race. I think that's a really interesting dynamic, and whether or not they're fully comfortable running him in the Kentucky Derby. Obviously, you just put the horse through the Lexington to try to get into the Kentucky Derby. So, it would be a little bit of an odd thing to then withdraw the horse from the Kentucky Derby, but you never know. And so that's a horse, maybe, I don't know. I keep having a feeling that maybe Hit Show doesn't end up making it. But that's just more of a gut feeling than anything else. The next horse up to come into this race, if there is another defection, would be Skinner, the John Sheriff's horse out in California, who I think a lot of us think is a pretty solid horse, is a horse that comes from off the pace and seems to be have become a totally different horse as a 3-year-old, really has grown up and has shown some, I think, a lot of ability and maybe more ability than the past performances would indicate, because he's always up against out there in California. That's such a speed favoring track. And to be a closer on a speed favoring track, it's not really where you want to be. And he's still managed to make up a lot of room and really has shown the ability to finish strong, I think. So he's a horse, if he draws in, I think is at least an intriguing dynamic into the race. Well, I mentioned there is another scratch in the Kentucky Oaks, and that is, in fact, another Chad Brown horse, and that is the filly Sheeta Booty is out. So Sheeta Booty is out of the Kentucky Derby, or Kentucky Oaks, I should say, had a very disappointing effort up there in the Gazelle last time out up in Aqueduct. Why is this a big deal? Well, guess who draws into the race? Wonder Wheel. That's right. The Mark Casse horse, the champion juvenile filly, draws into the field now for the Kentucky Oaks. I'm on record as saying I don't think Wonder Wheel is very good, but she is going to attract a ton of money. She is going to attract a lot of interest because she's got name recognition. She has that 2-year-old campaign that was so impressive. That last time out, I was, like I said, not particularly impressed with her effort at Keeneland. And going into that race, she was, out of the 3 big names, Punch Bowl, Julia Shining, and Wonder Wheel, I had the easiest time fading her, and she didn't run particularly well that day at all. Mark Casse was kind of baffled as to why she didn't run that well. Didn't think she had a bad trip necessarily or a bad setup, but just didn't fire. I just don't think she's that good. Now, that said, I don't think there's a lot of standouts in that Oaks field. I think there's a lot of horses that are pretty evenly matched. I do think a horse like Wet Paint has certainly passed all the tests. I think a filly like Pretty Mischievous is an interesting horse as well. I like, but a horse that I'm really high on, Punch Bowl, is not going to draw into this race in all likelihood unless there's a slew of other defections. So we'll keep you up to date, but that's obviously a big change that we've seen just in the last 24 hours as it relates to both the Kentucky Derby and Kentucky Oaks. Well, in other Derby news, workout videos are out, folks. And when workout videos are out, people have bad takes on social media. Just remember that, because for 350 days out of the year, nobody watches workout videos. Or I shouldn't say nobody. There's a lot of people who watch workout videos. But the general masses do not watch workout videos. And suddenly everybody's watching workout videos. The problem is people don't know what they're looking for in a workout video. They don't know what to expect from a workout video in some instances. They don't understand the dynamics of a workout video. They don't understand perhaps what the trainer intent in a workout is, which is so critically important. And so you have a lot of misinterpretation and lack of knowledge around workout videos. And then people overreact. These things go viral and people have takes and all sorts of things. Oh my God, this horse, look at they couldn't switch its lead, or this horse couldn't get past another horse. Did the trainer want this horse to get past another horse, etc. So this is a little bit of silly season happens right before the Breeders' Cup, happens right before the Kentucky Derby. Everybody becomes a workout video connoisseur and expert. Never fear. This week, we're going to have a couple of people on the Trust the Profits, not who watch workout videos, but who were there in the morning watching the workouts. Caitlin Free, Scott Shapiro, Joe Kristufik. Some combination of those three is going to be joining me. We're going to talk about these workouts. But like I said, there's a lot of buzz around who's been working out well, who hasn't been working out well, etc. Overwhelmingly, these horses work out well. I always make the joke every year. I'm amazed that really great horses work out really well. Folks, it's not rocket science. These are generally good horses. They're generally going to work out well. There's generally not a lot you can glean from that. Now, if there's a horse that turns in a poor workout, that's noteworthy sometimes. But what is a poor workout? Sometimes that is in the eye of the beholder. Sometimes that is pretty objective. But there's, like I said, some gray area in the middle. Angel of Empire, prime example. This is a horse that had picked up a lot of steam, a lot of interest. The workout report clockers, they gave him a D. Ooh, they gave him a D. Not a good grade for his workout recently against Jace's Road. So he was actually working with Jace's Road, didn't get past Jace's Road. Looked like he could at any point if he had wanted to, but, again, it's in the eye of the beholder a little bit, but very divisive work right there. So it's interesting to see that. Now, one piece of information that did come out that I think is somewhat relevant from the workout reports was Rocket Can working out with the blinkers. And Bill Mott said in a follow-up interview, the blinkers are going on for Rocket Can. He said that coming out of that Arkansas Derby, he did not feel like Rocket Can gave his all that day. In other words, the horse still had plenty left in the tank when he came back to the barn. He said there's kind of a little bit of an issue that he likes to run with horses, not past horses. How do you solve that problem? You put the blinks on. That hopefully gets the horse a little bit more focused, a little bit less concerned about what's going on to the left and to the right, and just focused on what's going on ahead. So like I said, very interesting dynamics there. We're going to have more information about this. And like I said, rather than wild speculation, I'd rather bring on the people who are there at the track watching every single day and who know this stuff inside and out. And that's why we're going to bring on the experts later this week to talk to me about some of those workouts that we've seen for all the major contenders for the Kentucky Derby. Now, the final piece of Derby news I will share is there are 2 times a year where I look 2 weeks ahead on my weather app. Only 2 times a year. One is the Kentucky Derby. The other is the Masters. Those are the 2 times a year I look at my weather app and go, what's the weather looking like 2 weeks out? Very early forecast for the Kentucky Derby. Highs around 70, partly cloudy conditions. Looks to be okay. We'll keep this up to date. It looks like the weather leading up to it that week is also looking to be quite nice. So not a lot of rain in the forecast leading up to the Derby. It looks like Derby Day will be okay. Again, that's 2 weeks out. We'll see what ends up happening, but never too early to start looking at track conditions. All right. Well, enough of the Kentucky Derby. Let's dive into some of the race recaps that we saw from this week. And there were a trio of stakes races at Oaklawn Park that were absolutely spectacular. We'll start with one for the fillies in the 3-year-old stakes race for the girls, Merlaza, the Brad Cox filly. Folks, you're not getting rid of that name anytime soon. Brad Cox has got a stable of just super, super impressive fillies and colts. And they're so deep. I mean, there's so many that are not in the Derby or the Oaks that are just so impressive. And in this case, it's Merlaza. Merlaza, now winner of 3 of 4 lifetime. The only loss she has by a neck in her maiden debut. Otherwise, 3 for her last 3. Maiden special weight, allowance company, now a big stakes race, comes from off the pace and wins. Very impressive, very professional effort from Merlaza. Joel Rosario aboard for that ride. Really good filly. I'm excited to see where she goes next. Interested whether or not Cox maybe sends her to the Black-Eyed Susan. We'll see. Obviously the Preakness weekend, that would be interesting. Not sure if he wants to go to the Acorn necessarily on Belmont weekend with her, but we'll see. There are some big things in this filly's future, though. She's very, very talented, great pedigree, both up top and underneath. So that was a big win. The highlight, though, was the Grade 2 Oaklawn Handicap, which was won by proxy. A little bit of a reversal of fortune this time from what happened last time in the Big Cap, where Stiletto Boy came from off the pace to win that race and just barely hold off proxy, I should say, that day. This time, another thrilling finish between Stiletto Boy, Last Samurai, and Proxy. Those three pull away from the field. Proxy making a move late. Stiletto Boy out front the entire time, being pressured by Classic Causeway, who fades. He ends up taking the lead into the stretch. Last Samurai dives to the inside, makes an inside move, is battling with Stiletto Boy. Proxy comes down the middle of the track, nabs them both right at the end, basically by about a head, and then Last Samurai beats Stiletto Boy by about a nose. But it was a bang, bang, bang finish for first, second, third. Thrilling, thrilling race. And this gets back to something I talked about earlier. When we talk about this older dirt handicap division, it may not have a lot of star power, folks. Proxy and Stiletto Boy and Last Samurai might be about as good as it gets. But what I do appreciate about it is they are producing some thrilling races. Whether it was the big cap, whether it was this Oaklawn handicap, they're evenly matched horses. And no, they're not superstars, but they are evenly matched. And it provides an opportunity for thrilling stretch runs and thrilling races, and honestly, good betting opportunities too, because there's not a dominant horse in this division. So as a result, nobody's going off at a super short price. And that provides us as bettors and handicappers much better value opportunities. So exciting race. One of the big takeaways that was not in the top three, Charge It. Of course, the very supremely talented Todd Pletcher colt, an absolute hot mess in the stretch. Exactly what he looked like, honestly, a year ago in the Florida Derby, all over the place. I made a comment that day that it looked like he was swerving around I-95 traffic in South Florida. Folks, he's still swerving around traffic. I mean, so green still. Horse just cannot run in a straight line, it feels like, coming down the stretch. Has just experienced a slew of different issues. And you could even tell, not really thrilled about rating. I mean, he really does not like sitting second or third. You could just tell by the way Saez had to have him under control. He wasn't, I wouldn't say he was rank at any point, but he was not thrilled about sitting third early in that race. That was pretty obvious just looking at his head movement going down the back stretch and how he was moving in general. So, he's a horse, like I said, supremely talented, but has not really put it all together yet for that kind of. He did in the Dwyer against a little bit of a lesser field, winning by 20 plus lengths. That was an insane performance that day. But outside of that effort, you keep expecting him to take a step forward, and just has not happened yet. And Oaklawn handicap, another instance of where that didn't happen. Now, there was a slight equipment change with Proxy. Got the cheek pieces put on. Not quite the same as blinkers, but similar sort of dynamic to keep the horse a little bit more focused. Helped him finish for sure coming down the stretch there at home. So good job by Proxy picking up that grade 2 Oaklawn handicap. Now, the final stakes race at Oaklawn Park on Saturday was the Bathhouse Stakes, won by everybody's favorite deep closer, Red Route 1. And let me tell you, boy, Joel Rosario is back. That was quite a ride. Wow. I mean, that was an incredible effort from Rosario and from Red Route 1. First of all, Red Route 1 qualifies for the Preakness. Now, this Preakness is shaping up to be a pretty darn good field because you got Red Route 1. You got First Mission, who won the Lexington, who Brad Cox said is going to the Preakness. Now you got a horse, as I mentioned earlier, Blazing Sevens, also going to be heading to the Preakness. And oh, by the way, the Japanese horse, Mandarin Hero, if he does not draw into the Kentucky Derby, which it seems unlikely that he will at this point, those connections have said they're going to Pimlico and running in the Preakness. So there are 4 horses in the Preakness right now who I'd pay to see. So that's potentially turning out to be a pretty nice field, and in addition to whoever comes out of the Derby and runs in the Preakness as well. So exciting. That Preakness, I'm getting excited about. I'm talking myself into this at the very least. It helps that I live an hour and a half away from the track, but I'm getting excited about this Preakness this year. So Red Route 1 wins the race, and I mean, just barely gets up in time, barely nabs Tappett's Shoes, who I thought was just a brilliant ride, and it was much the best, and had a wide trip, and it wasn't the easiest trip at all, and was kind of hounding victory formation, was running close to those really fast early fractions, 22-4 opening quarter, 46-4 opening half. They were moving up front, which is what allowed for Red Route 1 to do what he does best, which is close into a hot pace. And Joel Rosario was using every single muscle in his body to get that horse there at the finish line. And he just, I mean, he just got there barely. It was an absolutely incredible effort. Great ride. It's why people love Red Route 1, because he produces these sorts of thrilling flourishes at the end. Now, previously, he always came in second a lot of times, but this time he actually put it together and won. Now, granted, you could say it was not as good of a field as what you saw in the Derby prep season, and that might be true. But there were some nice horses in this race. That I joked online that it was kind of the Kentucky Derby junior varsity race, that it was a lot of horses that couldn't quite get there for the Derby that ended up running. Victory Formation, who I mentioned, Tappet Shoes, and Red Route 1 being among those. But there were a bunch of other horses that were, like I said, Two Eagles River. You had a few other horses, like I said, that were pretty nice runners who were in that race. And Red Route 1 getting the win with Joel Rosario aboard. Rosario wins all three of the stakes races at Oaklawn Park, and he wins all three, coming from well off the pace to pull off the victory. And all three are perfectly timed rides. Again, when Joel Rosario is on, he's on, and he is riding really well right now. And so all of that slump that we talked about at Gulfstream Park, that seems to be over now, that he has moved beyond Gulfstream Park and is now running in the Midwest a little bit more. Now, Keeneland features a trio of stakes races on Friday and Saturday. On Friday, you had the Double Dog Dare, which was won by Frost Point. Huge upset for Bill Mott. Really, I think the story out of this race was Interstate Daydream, in my opinion, blowing a perfect opportunity to get onto the lead. And if you want to look at the difference between Interstate Daydream and what she could have done, look at the ride that Raylu Gutierrez gave Hidden Connection. Now, Interstate Daydream goes off, I think, as a 2-1 or 9-5 favorite in that race. Hidden Connection goes off at 10-1. They go into the first turn neck and neck. Florent Giroux has inside position on Interstate Daydream. Now, how many times do you see when they're neck and neck and a horse has inside position on the rail, the horse on the rail continues on, the horse that's sitting outside sits back a little bit? Well, not with a good old Florent Giroux aboard. Flo decides we're going to take back with Interstate Daydream. Unbeknownst to me, why? And what happens? Raylu gets aggressive and goes to the lead with Hidden Connection. Now, Hidden Connection ends up finishing second, but Raylu got every single ounce of placement that he could have out of Hidden Connection, whereas Florent Giroux, in my opinion, completely screwed up with how to ride Interstate Daydream that day, because they were not an aggressive pace. You were going 24 and change, 48 and 2, I think, opening quarter and half. They were not going that fast. She could have easily sat in the lead and sustained that pace going for home, but now you're sitting fourth. Now the horse is coming from off the pace. Wasn't that great. Green Up, the other pretty big name in that race, coming off a really long layoff. I didn't think ran bad. Ran third that day, but it was not a bad effort necessarily from Green Up, who is still a pretty young horse in a lot of ways. And like I said, it has a lot of room for improvement, but I think a valid excuse, fresh off a very long layoff. And like I said, ran a decent third, but Frost Point just came flying at the end for Flavian Pratt. I mean, it was just gobbling up ground towards the end of that race. So much the best that day. Hidden Connection with Raylu aboard. Raylu with some just amazing rides at Keeneland over the weekend. One of the best, and I'll talk about him a little bit later. Then you move to Saturday in the Elkhorn Stakes. Verstappen, folks. Verstappen gets the win in the Elkhorn, holds off Red Knight, and I got to give it up to Caitlin Free, who came on this show when we were previewing the Jeff Ruby Stakes Day card, and there was a undercard race that featured Verstappen as an also eligible, and she gave Verstappen to us that day. She goes, this horse is really good, really talented, and he's at a big price. And he ran second that day to Wolfie's Dynagos, to his lone speed at Turfway Park. Next time out, I saw Verstappen here. I tweeted at Caitlin. I said, hey, I see your boys running. She put the house on him to win. I put a few bucks on him to win. And man, that paid off nicely, because Verstappen ends up winning, and I think 18-1 and coming home. So that was a huge win there. And folks, this is why we bring on special guests, because when you have people who cover tracks, they know horses like Verstappen, who maybe the general public doesn't know as much about, doesn't know the connections, glosses over. It's an also eligible in a race. I'm not sure I'm going to even spend the time handicapping that horse because they probably won't draw in, et cetera, et cetera. Verstappen gets the win there. Huge effort. And like I said, just a fantastic effort. And what made it even more impressive, giving up ground almost the whole way, was going super wide the entire way around. So much the best that day for Verstappen. Edged out Red Knight for the win. Now in the Ben Ali, this was kind of the twin sister or twin brother to the Oaklawn Handicap, another older dirt handicap division. And this one, Rattle and Roll, a name from last year's Derby Trail for Ken McPeak, comes back and comes from off the pace with a really great effort to win the Ben Ali. Made his move at the top of the lane, ended up winning easily. Call Me Fast finishes second with a really nice effort. That was a horse that had a little bit of traffic trouble around the third turn. Didn't have to check up necessarily, but definitely had a little bit of a stop in momentum. But you could tell that horse was full of run and wanted to go, and finally got in the clear in the stretch and really was making up some nice ground and finished a really strong second that day. Skippy Longstocking, the favorite in this race, really struggled. Didn't look that great. Made a move, went wide, but really flattened out coming down the stretch. Was and also ran in the race. And this just continues the struggles for trainer Saffie Joseph Jr. in the Commonwealth of Kentucky. Overall, in the last 5 years, Saffie is winning at a 9% clip at Keeneland. During that same period of time, he is 0 for 7 in graded stakes races at Keeneland. And oh, get this, 0 for 22 in graded stakes races in the Commonwealth of Kentucky. Put that in your back pocket. Just keep remembering that next time you see a Saffie Joseph Jr. horse going off at a short price in the Commonwealth. Well, finally, there was another older handicap division race out at Santa Anita, the Californian Stakes. Defunded gets the win, gets off to a slow start, actually hops out of the gate a little bit. Bob Baffert obviously said that was part of the plan. Gave a lot of credit to Juan Hernandez. Very good ride. Horse showed a different dimension coming from off the pace, really put it all together. Was able to blow by the field coming down the stretch, puts away Royal Ship, who is kind of an on-again, off-again rival, I think, when they run against each other. But Defunded also mentally was in a much better place than normal, handled the paddock very well. This is a horse that does get worked up sometimes, different surroundings and different paddock setups. So Defunded really putting it all together. Just to follow up on the point that I made earlier, people might not be enthralled with this older division of male dirt horses, but this is what we have, folks. We got Defunded, we got Stiletto Boy, we got Last Samurai, Proxy, Art Collector, West Willpower, maybe Rich Strike if he decides to run this year. Rumor is he's going to be running in the Ali Sheba. Maybe Rattle and Roll if he can put a couple more races together. Maybe Country Grammar if he continues to run after coming back from Maidan. That's where we're at. No, it's not going to blow your skirt up. No, it's not exactly the most thrilling division in sports, but it at least is a competitive division, I think. And it's a division that largely they're going to take turns beating each other, which means there's going to take turns getting a decent price. So that's where we're at with some of those stakes races and that older handicap division. And one of the hopes I have for this year is that this 3-year-old crop may not be superlatives. They may not be outstanding, but I'm hoping this 3-year-old division replenishes this handicap division next year. That you see a lot of horses like a Rocket Can. I know I've used this horse a few times as an example. Maybe a horse like Hit Show. Maybe some of these horses that are pretty decent Derby horses, but maybe not top of the line. They keep running as 4-year-olds. We need more horses running as 4-year-olds. So I'm hoping there's not a number of horses with big siring pedigrees necessarily outside of maybe Forte and one or two others who are coming out of this. So I'm hoping that this 3-year-old crop replenishes the handicap division next year. Well, let's move on to some jockey news. And it was a rough weekend on the track, I will say. Obviously, everybody saw the really dangerous accident that took place on Friday at Keeneland with Flavian Pratt and Tyler Gaffleone. Sadly, the horse that Tyler Gaffleone was on that day had to be put down. Pratt's horse was lugging in. Some people thought it was an irresponsible ride from Pratt. He was suspended 3 days. That will be served coming up. And there, it looked as if Johnny Velasquez had some words with Pratt after the race while they were on horseback. Again, it looked like the horse was lugging in. I'm not sure you could put it all on Pratt. It was certainly a little bit of a dangerous move, But again, I think there was a lot of mitigating circumstances. Nevertheless, he's suspended 3 days. Gafleon was fortunately just kind of managed to escape with just minor injuries, had a busted up lip, but was back riding the next day. And actually, I think won 4 races the next day at Keeneland. I mean, he was on a roll on Saturday. So great to see Tyler was back and healthy and running well there at Keeneland. It's a scary moment. Also, a very scary moment on Sunday at Gulfstream Park as Edgar Zayas suffers a really bad fall going into the first turn in a race down at Gulfstream Park. Now, fortunately, the horse is okay. And last time I heard, which is pretty recently, Zayas was conscious when taken to the hospital, but he was unable to get up on his own. So that is a little concerning. Not sure what condition he's in. He was conscious, as according to the last reports. But that was a scary situation because they were going into the first turn. It was a full field. They were all bunched up, and his horse was second place on the inside rail. So when he went down, the whole field, they were so bunched up they couldn't get around. I mean, the whole field went over top of him, it looked like. And like I said, thank God he was at least conscious leaving the track, hoping and praying that he's okay, and certainly sending our best wishes to him and his family and all the connections there. Did he see like the horse, like I said, was okay, was reported to be all right. So some scary moments there on the track for the jockey news. Now, I mentioned earlier, Joel Rosario is back. He's riding beautifully. I mean, now that listen, I've said it before and I'll say it again. When you put Joel Rosario on a horse that is naturally a closer, I usually don't have a lot of problems. Is when you put him on a horse that's naturally a front runner that I get worried sometimes because either he doesn't divvy out the pace right or he gets a little too cute and takes back with the horse. And then things, plan B doesn't necessarily go as well. So I always get worried about that. But when he's on the horse that fits his style, man, it's impressive to watch. It's really, really impressive to watch. What was also impressive to watch was the stretch run from Raylu Gutierrez in the bailout race on Saturday at Keeneland with Front Run the Fed on the turf sprint. Raylu just, weaving through traffic, coming down the stretch, inside move, weaving through traffic, getting there at the end. Front Run the Fed, it seemed like he could run for days after that race. He had so much horse under him, and it just finally got him in the clear and wove through traffic just absolutely beautifully. Listen, if you've watched this program before, you know how much I like Raylu Gutierrez. Always been a big fan of his. Think he's such a strong rider and such a smart, young, aggressive rider as well. He's got such a bright future. And so always love seeing him, whether it's down at the fairgrounds, sometimes at Oak Lawn, obviously up at Keeneland. Love seeing Raylu put on a show there in the bailout on Saturday at Keeneland. Well, that's going to do it for this week's Win Play show. Make sure to press that subscribe button because we got a lot of content coming up, folks. We got special guests coming on with the fastest 2 minutes. We ask them 5 Kentucky Derby questions in under 2 minutes. It's a lot of fun. Make sure to check those videos out. We got the Spotlight series continuing where we go in depth on each individual contender in the 2023 Kentucky Derby. This week as well, Colin Sheehan and I are going to start our barn tours. We're going to have a barn tour of Todd Pletcher, Brad Cox, and Tim Yakteen, the 3 trainers with multiple entries in this year's Kentucky Derby. Talk a little bit about the barns in general. Talk a little bit about their path to the Kentucky Derby. Talking a little bit about trainer success, trainer tactics, etc. in the Kentucky Derby for those 3 barns. It should be a great content. Don't want to miss that. And then finally, have some other specialty content. We're going to do Doubling Down. We're going to do Capping the Card this week. That'll be a lot of fun. Like I said, probably going to try to get on Scott Shapiro, Caitlin Free, Joe Kristufik. Going to do some workout report videos. Going to be a lot of fun. So whatever your interest is in the Derby and horse racing, we got you covered. By the way, shout out to Evangeline Downs. We went there Thursday night on the Cocktail Lounge, and hey, they gave us a shout out at the track. You got to love that. So Trust the Profits getting shouts outs at the track. At Evangeline Downs on a Thursday night. That's where we're going to be going from now on the Thursday Night Lounge. So it's a lot of fun live betting those tracks. I always like betting those secondary tracks a lot. So that should be a lot of fun. So make sure to join in this Thursday. I believe the start time is going to be 7 p.m., maybe 8 p.m. It'll be here on YouTube. So press that subscribe button. All right, friends. Until next time, my name is Matthew DeSantis, wishing you a great and profitable day at the races and reminding you that it's now post time.